I want to chat quickly about something that's sort of been a bit of a buzzword, and that's SCIDEP or SCIDEP. Just a little bit from your side, Craig. What is this thing, and how has it been played out?
Okay, SCIDEP or SCIDEP, as you said, is really it was an agreement sort of between the major life offices, the major life companies in South Africa, that they would standardize their definitions for a set of diseases, diseases being cancer, heart attack, stroke, and coronary artery bypass graft. So they sort of standardize the definitions for these, so that when somebody is reading up on these conditions, they'll, at least when they compare different companies, they'll be able to be comparing the same definitions, the same medical definitions of those diseases. What it evolved into is often showing the different companies that now have to show what percentages they pay out for the different diseases. So, for example, when you choose a certain amount of severe illness coverage, you choose maybe R1 million coverage, in your SCIDEP or your SCIDEP grid, it'll show you that for, say, cancer stage 4, it'll pay out 100% of that amount. For stage 3, it'll pay 75% of that amount, and the different severities that go lower are often lower for the different like severities of the disease. What SCIDEP doesn't take into account is often all the other diseases that we touched on earlier. It only considers those 4 dread disease claims. And what we actually found is that a lot of the main causes of dread disease, a lot of the main things that have an impact on somebody's lifestyle, are actually not included in SCIDEP. So it's SCIDEP, from one point of view, it does provide sort of a bit of disclosure to the client to be able to decide to be able to tell what is actually being covered for those conditions. But we actually found that about half of the actual dread diseases, in terms of incidence, the likelihood of them happening, are not actually covered under SCIDEP. So SCIDEP is sort of an indication, but it's definitely not the be-all and end-all of dread disease cover and how to assess it.
So it's gone some way to maybe simplifying to a certain degree what a person is purchasing,
yeah,
and having a better understanding of what it really is. The next question is really around, well, how much, Rayland? How do we decide how much cover we actually take from this?
It becomes difficult for a person because it depends on how they want to cover themselves. Unfortunately, things like income protection, life cover, generally people spend a lot of money on those benefits because they find them more important for themselves. And there's often not enough money left to be able to pay for the more expensive benefits of having a dread disease cover. Now, the reason why it is as expensive as it is in comparison to the other benefits is really because of the amount of times that people can land up claiming from this benefit as well. Now, very often, because of the enhancements of medical technology, we are in a situation where people are surviving more than one dreaded disease throughout their lifetime. I mean, an interesting statistic that I read up on is that 1/3 of strokes that happen are generally between the ages of 15 and 49. Now, that's really quite a young amount of people that are actually suffering from strokes and being in a position where they're not necessarily able to continue working at the same level as they were before. Now, let's say, for example, that stroke might not have been completely debilitating and you can actually earn an income. The problem for that kind of a person is that they might have to reduce their stress levels. They might have to not work the 16-hour days to work for those promotions. And then they land up in a position at the age of 30 or 40 where they can't necessarily push their income up to the next level based on those various options in terms of their occupation. So it really becomes important to look at a person and see what their earning potential really is, and to look how their lifestyle would be affected if they had to suffer from one of these major diseases. From that perspective, we then do an analysis with the person and actually can decide on a certain portion of cover. The other concern as well is that there's 2 different ways of covering your benefits. There's tiered options and there's non-tiered options. Now, a non-tiered option would really pay you out 100% on quite a non-severe sort of situation. Now, obviously, it becomes important to understand the difference between those products. Let's say, for example, a person took a tiered product. Excuse me, that would really mean that they're now in a position where if they suffer with a stage 1 cancer, for example, they would only get a 25% payout of their sum assured. If we assume a sum assured of R1 million, that means that a 250,000 Rand payment would be made. However, if you're now in a position where you're taking 100% benefits, you might get paid out the 100% immediately just on a stage 1 or stage 2 cancer, which is possibly something you could recover from quite easily. But what happens if there is a different cancer that arises 5 or 10 years later because of the first one? It can cause a situation where people run out of benefits when they might need it. And chances are they've already used up their capital amounts and they might be in a position where they can't necessarily get that cover again. So it's very important to make sure that every person sits with their advisor, really looks at the details in terms of the tiered benefits, the non-tiered benefits, and the amount of cover that they can get. And based on that, an educated decision should be made.